Hey, my name's Jonathan, and I'm a veteran.
Hi, my name is Daryl, and I'm a veteran.
My name is Chad, and I'm a veteran.
Hey, I'm Travis. I'm an Air Force veteran.
Hi, my name's Ashley, and I'm a veteran.
Well, hello and happy Sunday, everybody. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. If you are if this is the first time joining me tonight, be sure to like, subscribe, and share at the end of this. We want to make sure that all of our veterans are aware that this platform is available for them. So a couple of things I want to talk about. So over here, we have a couple of books. If you haven't already picked one up, this one right here, that is Jason Lee Morrison's book called A Perfect Fucking Life. That is an anthology. And then this one right here, that's Lee Allen Deckelman's book. And the things that he went through emotionally and where he is today in his mind with everything. So basically how he became mindful. I'm also waiting on a cookbook that I'll be able to show everybody that is from Richard Fleek. And that goes to, any proceeds for that goes to his nonprofit organization called, I just had it, Minutes Wisely. So, okay. Well, we have a wonderful guest who has graciously agreed to join tonight. His name is Ed McLean, and he is waiting backstage. In the meantime, though, before we get there, let's take a look at the chats. Jason, thanks so much. Appreciate you and your support. Sarge, Angry Sarge, good evening. Hopefully you're having a great night. Oh, it's a silly night, apparently. So hopefully things will improve. And be sure to catch the recording if you can't stay too long. But thank you for dropping in. Much appreciated. So a couple of things. So if you're looking for different resources, there are several that are out there. And a lot of this show is to provide veterans a place that they can tell their story and any resources that they might have or are aware of in their state. So we have things such as, warriorrounds.com, Irreverent Warriors, SaveAWarrior.org, NoFallenHeroesFoundation.org, ReconSniperFoundation.org, MilitaryOneSource.mil. If you're in Nevada, it's the veterans.nv for Nevada.gov. We've got bunkerlabs.org. Global Comics, that is for one of our veterans, and he actually has created a comic book. So you go to globalcomics.com/a/tales of nihilism/comics. And he also is in the process of writing a book that will be hopefully available soon called Troublemakers. You can get Richard Fleek's cookbook also through Amazon. It's Backyard Cooking Squidly. So that's out there. And then you can also go out to chamberlainsociety.org. And then we have another great resource for you this evening. So hopefully everybody can join tonight. And let's welcome my guest, Ed McLean. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
I'm doing really well. So what have you been up to? Anything fun?
No, kind of up to my eyeballs in grease here this weekend. Working on the car. Hopefully I got all the grease off my face because
I don't see him. No, go like this. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it was all over my nose and my forehead. So
let's see. So Jason says, thank you for your service, Ed.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, I know you've got you've got your hands in a lot of different pots and continuing to serve outside of the military. And So we'll definitely want to hear all about that. But to begin, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your childhood and your education?
Okay. Yeah. Grew up in Maine. Um, was uh, kind of grew up out in the countryside out there. Lived on uh, 48 acres, and so my dad was a racer. He was a Air Force veteran as well. He served in between Korea and Vietnam as an Air Force radar technician. Spent most of his time up in Alaska.
Oh, wow.
Um, and because of being out in the middle of nowhere and dad having the racing background and everything, that I ended up having to have all the toys really early. So we would do things like dirt bikes and stuff up on the trails through Maine and that kind of thing. So grew up all the way through high school there. Ended up going to St. Joseph's College, which is in Standish, Maine, and had no intention of going into the military. Back then,
Okay.
I was firmly fixed on becoming a lawyer.
Oh, wow. That's a big difference.
Yeah, and but I'd been doing a lot of work. I was an Eagle Scout and had learned survival, outdoor survival stuff from Ken Cole, who wrote the Armed Forces Survival Manual. Was one of the authors of that.
That's cool.
And so I ended up joining the Civil Air Patrol and started teaching survival to them. Ended up becoming a ground team leader with them. And so we were doing a lot of searches with the emergency location transmitters, had the direction finder basically, and we were the ones that actually went on the ground to find where it was. So St. Joe's at the time did not have Air Force ROTC. They had Army ROTC, and I had actually contemplated, because I was running out of money basically to go to law school. So I was like, well, there's always military I could go serve for, and then get the money for that, get a GI Bill, whatnot, and then come back out. And long story short, I did not end up going to Army ROTC. Had a really good time with our Army ROTC. I definitely had the aptitude for all the stuff, because particularly with scouts, the land nav and everything was really easy for me. But I ended up going into the Air Force instead. But I was very naive at the time. I actually listened to a recruiter that told me it was easier to get my commission from the inside. So basically, he was looking up his numbers for enlisted, in particular linguists. And so I ended up taking the ASVAB, scoring really high, and then ended up taking that crazy test to see if you can become a linguist, and I passed that one as well. So that was 91. It actually was November of 91. I went in did basic training down in San Antonio, and then from there went to Monterey, California, Presidio Monterey, the DLI out there, Defense Language Institute, and went through the course there, and ended up in Omaha, Nebraska.
Wow.
So definitely making the tour of the country. And then I actually cross-trained. I was really good with equipment, and still am good with computers and whatnot. And so I ended up cross training and ended up on the E3 AWACS, and ended up going over to Saudi Arabia for Southern Watch, and did a tour over there. And then after that, by the way, all this time, this was, I signed up for 6. I was hitting about 5-year mark, and I was like, well, I'm really liking this. I really am enjoying the position. And so I wanted to become an officer and manage linguist, which obviously that's never in the cards. So as far as military is concerned, because you never go back to supervise anybody that had anything to do with what you were doing. And so I put in 2 packages. One was like bootstrap, where you go through ROTC, and the other one was OCS, and the OCS package didn't make it. The bootstrap one with ROTC did. So I was like, well, I'd rather go with a sure thing than chance the other package. So I ended up getting out for 2 years and got another bachelor's degree, and came back in as an intel officer. And so ended up from there, went up to after tech school, ended up going up to Mountain Home, and that's where they had at the time it was the expeditionary wing, where they had all the different aircraft in one spot. The idea was they would deploy together to go somewhere. So you had F-15Cs, F-15Es, F-16 Wild Weasels. You had the tankers, and you had B-1s all in one spot. It seemed like we never ever deployed that way, but that was the concept. And so because of being in that position, it was really kind of lucky. I ended up being like the reserve intel officer, but for all the squadrons. So I learned how to basically brief and support every single squadron at the base. And I was also made the SSO while I was there.
And SSO is?
Special Security Officer.
Okay.
So went from there to down to Lackland, and ended up being an instructor at the Inter-American Air Forces Academy.
Oh, wow.
And which was very challenging for me, because I'm not a native speaker of Spanish. Obviously, I'm a gringo. And they put me on podium. I had to teach Central and South Americans in Spanish how to do the unclassified pieces of intel. So it was very challenging for me to do that. But it was a really good program. Really a lot of high speed low drag people that are down there doing that. And so did that for a while, and then I started actually having some health issues, and decided that I wanted to leave on my own accord. I probably should have just stuck it out and got boarded, but I felt like that would kind of take away from my experience being in the military. So after being an officer for 5 years, I separated.
Okay.
And then I became an Air Force civilian. You're detecting a theme here. Up at the Pentagon, and did that for a while, and then transitioned out of that, and now I'm a contractor. So,
wow, that sounds like quite a bit, actually. So let's break this down a little bit. So when you finally decided you were going to join the military, you had the conversation with your parents?
Yeah. Yeah,
How did that go?
that was uh, it was not even an issue. It was like, okay, yeah.
Excellent.
My parents were, particularly where my dad was an Air Force veteran. He's like, yeah, you know, and he flat said, out of all the different services, I'd prefer you to be in the Air Force because he knew what it was. And,
Exactly. It's familiar to him, so he can
yeah,
understand exactly what you're going through.
yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how basic training went. I mean, I know, probably not very prepared in that sense, but in the same regard, um, it sounds like you at least kind of were an outdoors individual. Um, so I'm assuming you were fairly, I don't know if athletic is the word, but at least you knew what it was like to be outside in the heat and all that such.
Well, I was kind of fortunate. I was hit Lackland in the middle of winter, so
Oh, wow. Okay.
uh, yeah, it wasn't too bad. It was really the toughest part was just being away from home. It was the first time I had been away from home for an extended period of time.
And how long was that?
For basic, or
Hmm.
it was 6 weeks.
Okay.
And probably about a month in, that's when it really started to hit me about being away from home. Because even when I went through college the first time, I was commuting from home. It was just a financial thing. It was a lot cheaper to
Right.
do it from home. But yeah, it wasn't really that difficult for me. It was, mentally, I think it was a little tougher for me than anything. Um, the uh, Mainly because of the games that they play and stuff with the TIs and everything.
Break you all down just to build you back up. And
Yeah, but it wasn't anything that was like crazy or whatever. It was where I'd done the Civil Air Patrol stuff for so long. I knew how to march. I knew how to do facing movements. It was really, I had an advantage because I had done all that, and so it was not that big of a deal to me.
right.
So it was more just being apart from family that hurt the most.
Yeah. And do you recall any funny stories about being in basic training?
Well, I actually kind of went through it twice because having gone through that ROTC program, they actually send you to what they call field training
Okay.
for the cadets, and it is like a month-long abbreviated, nowhere near as intense basic training. And because I had been through real basic, and like all the cadets, because they were calling me grandpa anyways, and
How old were
I
you
was
when you joined?
I was let's see, it was 91. I would have been 22. So
Okay.
I was old when I joined when I enlisted, and then I was of course when I got my commission, uh, having served another 5 years. I'm like 28, 29 years old going through there, and all these people that are straight out of high school into college. I'm like, I got a good 5 years on them easy. And so but anyway, it was during field training that I thought it was so funny, because I haven't been through basic and knowing all the stuff that they were going to do and everything. And I happened to be near where the barracks, and down there they had most of them were bunk beds, but there were a few that were like single beds.
Hmm.
And I firmly believe the TIs did that deliberately so that they could do just this. But basically, the TI came over, got to the end of the bed, looked at the bunk, grabbed the end of it, and started picking up and slamming it down on the ground. whose bunk is this?
Goodness.
And I'm like, I know exactly what's going on, and I'm just trying to keep from smiling and laughing out loud during the whole thing. And of course, the cadets are just freaked out by the whole thing, and I'm like, no, one thing that's already toned down, and you're barely getting a taste of it, but I thought it was really humorous at any rate.
So did they ever do, I guess, like in the Marines, I guess they call it like welfare checks. They go through and they make you dump everything out.
Oh yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, not so much during that field training, but during regular basic. Oh yeah, that was pretty constant.
Yeah.
But to this day, I can make a 6-inch square T-shirt fold.
See, it sticks with you.
Yeah.
Did you ever end up when they would do that and everybody's stuff gets mixed in the center of the room or the barracks? Did you ever get not get the same shoes back or something like that? Like you got one boot smaller than the other?
No, we never ran into that. When they did their welfare checks on us, usually they just pulled the drawers out and dumped it right in front of your locker.
Okay.
So they didn't usually put everything in one spot. I do just remembered another humorous story. It's a little on the gross side, but it was during mail call, and of course the TI's at the front of the room, and one of the guys, we were all sitting on the floor cross-legged. One of the guys decided that he was going to let one fly. And the TI just stared at him, and he goes, "Stick your head between your legs and suck that up."
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. So you're just getting over a cold?
Yeah. Sorry for.
No, it's okay. And so, as a linguist, what opportunities did you have, and what languages did you learn?
I had studied French from the 7th grade all the way through my first bachelor's degree. So I was really fluent in French. So they sent me to DLI for Spanish.
Makes sense. Perfect sense.
Yeah. But it did work out later on that because when things started to go bad in Haiti, they needed someone that would be able to, had the Spanish and French background. And so they sent me to DLI a second time to learn Haitian in 6 weeks. And the unfortunate thing was I got a month into it, and they ended up calling me up and saying, "Yeah, never mind, we don't need you." So I never made it to Haiti, but.
Okay. And so did you ever have an opportunity to use French then?
Nope.
No.
Nope.
So do you still speak French?
Very poorly. Languages are one of those things that if you don't use them, they go away pretty quickly. Right. Same thing with Spanish, and particularly the Haitian. I'm back to the point where I can understand. If I hear it, I can understand it, but I can't speak it very well anymore.
That's fair. I took a couple of years of Spanish myself, and I can still pick out words, but I always struggled with putting a proper sentence together. That was always my big thing. So, any other funny stories you can think of that while you were in the Air Force?
When we were in Riyadh, we were housed at Escon Village outside of Riyadh. If you're not familiar, Escon was a big complex that the Saudis had built for the nomadic people to try to get them basically out of the desert and into housing. And the nomads said, no, if we accept that, then we have to accept Saudi rules. So thanks, but no thanks. And so they had all this huge complex of buildings and stuff that the Americans basically came in, and that became like our billeting and that kind of stuff right there, which is like a little mini base. And they would bus us from there to the Riyadh airport to get on our aircraft, because that's where we were actually flying out of. And the very first day that they bussed us, there was we came out of ESCON. There was an intersection. It was like a highway that kind of ran by, and then it had the off ramps that came up. Excuse me. And there was a bridge that we had to cross to get onto the on ramp. And there was like a factory or something that was across the way, but it was like a divided, like 4-lane highway. It was you're coming down basically. So it was like 4 lanes coming up to this bridge, and then 4 lanes with a median in the middle on the other side too. So normally, you'd come up, you'd have to go past the median and stuff. Well, where this factory was, if you'd have to go like down past the median and then kind of make a U-E to get into this factory. Unless apparently if you're a Saudi driver, then that doesn't really apply.
Oh no!
Because when we were pulling up in the bus to do that, all these cars kept coming up and going the wrong side of the road to get to this factory. And one guy came flying up and apparently forgot that he needed to go on that side, slammed on the brakes, spun out, went backwards down the on-ramp, and then up the wrong side of the road. And all I could think of is, I'm not in Kansas anymore.
Oh gosh. Oh goodness. So the whole time that you were, how long were you in Saudi Arabia?
It was just one tour. It was
Okay.
179 days. So.
Okay. And so did you eat the food?
Yeah, that was really culture shock. We were very fortunate being there. We had tours available to us through MWRs. We were going downtown Riyadh and stuff at the time, and there was for me, it was a lot of culture shock between Americans and being in Saudi Arabia, and because of the differences culturally, like the women were not allowed to eat in the restaurants if there was no family room available. It was not uncommon to see women in their abaya sitting outside on the curb eating their food, because that was just the way it was. And we ended up going downtown. It was me and another guy, and we had a female with us, and we had to wear collared shirts, long pants. I think we were wearing like polo shirts or something like that. But she had to wear the full abaya. It was a safety thing. And we went, and we couldn't find a restaurant with a family room that we could have eaten together in. And so we got some shawarmas off a street stand and sat down to eat them, and she put down the top scarf thing to eat a shawarma, and she had very blonde hair, and it was very obvious that we're Americans eating this stuff. And not even 5 minutes passed before the religious police came ripping up in the Suburban, started yelling at us, telling her to put her scarf back on. So
wow. So how do they expect them to eat?
they can like open it up enough so you can see their face, but their hair must remain covered the whole time. So it's just, completely different culture. And it was that part was um, kind of shocking to me to see that first person, and then have the dealing with the religious police and that kind of thing. It's just kind of like, okay.
So is that what they call themselves, religious police, or is it just what you guys
I,
call
I forget the name of it, but they are actually religious police. They go around and make sure that the people are adhering to the Muslim or the Islamic rule for Saudi Arabia. And so you have the regular police, then you have the religious police.
Goodness. I did hear, I had a female guest on, and she did, I think she said she worked for a general and she would have to go into town a lot. And so she was required to wear all of that. But of course the guys, wouldn't have to. And so it was always very difficult. So if they wanted food, they'd go in and get it and bring it back out. So
Yeah, it was not a cool situation as far as I was concerned. While we were there, that was actually, it happened right before we had rotated in. Apparently, there was there's a section down there called the Gold Market where you go down and get really cheap jewelry and that kind of stuff. And there was a female that was traveling with a bunch of her American buddies. They went down. She was wearing the abaya at the time, went into a shop, and the guy was like, "Oh, my friend's the Americans." He's like, "Oh, don't worry about it," and told her she could take the abaya off, and she's just wearing like t-shirts and jeans on underneath, and he's, "Oh, don't worry about it, don't worry about it," and had showed the Americans around his shop and everything, and then he told the girl, "I got all this other jewelry and stuff upstairs. You got to go see that." And so she went upstairs, and then this guy ended up following up and sexually assaulted her. Mm-hmm. And she ended up getting kicked out of the country because they said the Saudis said that, well, she took her abaya off and was alone in the room with the guy, so it was her fault. And I'm like, that's the kind of stuff that just, I know it's a completely different culture, but to me, it just really rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah, and when we here in America, we take a lot of that for granted, right? Because women have had a voice for a long time now, and of course, the ability to vote, etc. So it's really difficult when you go someplace else. I mean, I can imagine. I haven't been outside the US, but I can imagine the difficulties when you see something like that, because it totally goes against everything that we as Americans are taught.
Well, it really, I feel that seeing stuff like that is incredibly important. Before I joined the military, the most out of the country I've been to Canada a couple of times, and that was it. And that's not really a good comparison to everything, all the other cultures and things that are out there.
Right.
And it really changes your perspective. It makes you much more worldly when you understand what is really going on in some of these countries. And I've seen some like interviews or whatnot of young Americans, and the one that got me, this was a while back, if I remember right. It was I believe someone had been arrested for speaking their mind or something in Korea or something like that. If I remember right, but it was like North Korea or something along those lines. And they were interviewing this young woman, And, well, what do you think? And she's like, well, I don't understand why someone can't just, speak their mind. It's a free world. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's not a free world. You live in a free country. And I really feel that that's a problem that we as Americans have, is we equate every place else to what we are experiencing here, what our freedoms are, and they are completely different. Even with free countries, that have a lot of freedom, it is different. I spent a lot of time in civilian life in Germany, and which is, if anybody ever has a chance to go, that's the place to go. That is
Germany.
Yeah.
What's your favorite place in Germany?
Well, we were in Stuttgart, and
Okay.
Stuttgart is just about the best place to be to see everything in Europe, because
Okay.
it is kind of like the central hub. The high speed trains come into there, and so you are literally 2 hours from Munich. You're I think it was 4 hours high speed train to Paris. You could be in Austria in 2 hours. You could be, in France in 2 hours. In the Alsace area. Um, it's also kind of like the German Detroit, if you will, because that's where the main hubs for Mercedes, BMW, and Porsche. So you'd see prototypes going around there. And so for a car guy like me, I was drooling over everything. There was some really neat things in Stuttgart, the Porsche Museum, the Mercedes-Benz Museum. Um, but even being in Germany, I was kind of going off on that tangent, but even being in Germany, it was definitely different. I kind of equated it. We had been over there for 7 years, and by the end of the 7 years, we were like, we're ready to go back. We're ready to go home, because we actually had bought a place over there, so we were getting the full experience of what it was like to
Right.
be kind of like an expat in Germany. And I guess it's kind of 180 degrees out from what the American attitude is. American attitude is kind of like, well, if there's not a rule that says you can't, then you can.
Right.
But in Germany, it's the exact opposite. If there's not a rule that says you can, you can't. And so we had run into that a couple of times, particularly with the house that we had and whatnot. It's like, well, what do you mean we can't do that? And there were some things like, and you would think they wouldn't be that way in Germany, particularly with their history, but discrimination is still okay in Germany. And so they run into that too. I had my supervisor when I first moved in. He was telling me about the time that he had first got to Germany and was looking for a place to live, and he's plain white bread like me, and his wife is Dominican and very, very dark. And so he had found this place, talked to the German landlord and everything. Oh yeah, we'd love to have you here. This would be great. You'll really love it here. It'd be fantastic. His wife wasn't with him as he was doing all this, and they showed him the apartment. Yeah, this is great. This is perfect. And he's like, before I sign on the dotted line, I want my wife to take a look at it. And the woman was like, okay, yeah, no problem. And so we made arrangements to come back in a couple of days. And he said that he walked up to the door, rang the doorbell. The lady opened the door, looked at him, smiled, looked at his wife, and slammed the door.
Wow. It does still exist outside of the United States, and a lot of people don't recognize that, they think the grass is greener on the other side, and that generally isn't the case.
Yeah, yeah. And that's even with like I do have to admit, like the socialized medicines they had there, it's the equipment and stuff that they have available, depending on what it is pretty good. The the optometrist stuff, we went because we were on the economy and we were going to see the doctors and stuff. The optometrist had equipment from the 1960s.
Wow.
It was pristine, but it was 1960s equipment. The other thing that was very apparent is we had private insurance because of we were tied to the base over there. And so every time we needed help and had to see somebody or whatnot, we went right to the front of the line. It was like, oh, you have private insurance? Okay, we'll see you right now, and you're going to get all the best care. And, it was like no holds barred. You got everything that you needed. And talking to our German neighbors, that was not what they got. They said, if you needed to see a doctor, it might be 6 weeks before you can see a doctor.
Yeah.
If you're lucky. And they, usually did not get the best care because they were off of the German government program, and their taxes were awful. It was like 53% was their tax.
Nobody could. How do they live with a rate like that? That's nuts.
Yeah, it's just what they were used to.
Well, I suppose, right? I mean, you're familiar, and it becomes your everyday life, and you learn to survive that way. I suppose that's accurate.
Yeah.
I know in Singapore, I believe it was Singapore, they would cane you if you were caught shoplifting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, publicly caned, not, let's put you in a cell for, however long. You didn't do it again. That's for darn sure.
Oh, it was like in like Saudi, they I can't remember if they had it when we were there or not. I want to say that they had like an execution while we were there, a public execution. And if you got caught stealing, they chop off hands, that kind of stuff. So,
yeah. And do you remember what the execution, what that person had done to be executed?
No.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that when you hear those different stories, it really makes you more appreciative of where you're from.
Yeah.
And so I definitely understand that. So when you were in Saudi Arabia for one tour, you said?
Yep.
And then from there you went.
That was when I got my commission.
Okay. All right. And how did that go for you?
It wasn't too bad. It was a little difficult because I actually was discharged from being enlisted and went into the ROTC program. So I had to come up with jobs and that kind of stuff for the 2 years that I was going to be out. And of course, my timing was impeccable. After I got my commission, they changed it back to 1 year if you had a degree previously, which is what I was in. So
wow.
I was like, awesome. But yeah, it was fine. I had actually my original bachelor's was, they called it pre-law, but it was actually a bachelor's in history. And so when I went into ROTC to get my commission, I was going to get a master's in history, and I'm a very slow reader. And I think he was a doctor that ran the program at the school I was going to. He was really into trains, and expected you just for his course to read like 150 pages a night.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, I can't do that. And not to mention the fact that I don't really care that much about trains. And that's basically what the master's was in, was the history of trains. And so I was like, nope. So I changed my degree and I got a second bachelor's in Spanish. Spanish with a French minor. So that was probably the easiest degree I ever had.
And that was what, 2 years?
Yeah.
Okay. So when you separated, how did that go for you? What was that like?
It wasn't really that easy.
How so?
Well, when I first put in my paperwork to separate, I was having a very, very tough time finding a job that would actually pay the bills. I had tried to find a couple of contractors down in San Antonio, and I was very well qualified for the positions, but they were not paying very much, and they ended up not hiring me because I guess I exceeded what they needed. They wanted to hire someone cheaper. And so at any rate, I was separating in San Antonio. My wife at the time didn't want to leave San Antonio, but so I was trying to find a place there, that I could work, and could not find anything. So at any rate, I ended up being very fortunate from a very unfortunate event. I happened to be, looking for jobs, and my separation was pending when 9/11 happened. And I got stop lossed. And
What does that mean?
They don't allow you to leave. Basically, you remain on active duty, and you have to, you continue on until they say, okay, you can leave, kind of thing.
Okay.
And which actually ended up probably saving my hide, because it was during that 1 year where I was stop lost, where I got hired for the Air Force federal position. And so that's how I ended up there doing that. So it was difficult coming out, because particularly it was one of those things where, I think it was pretty much every year they gave you this is what you're making based on all your benefits and everything. This is the equivalent of what you're making. And you're like, yeah, right. And
I can do the math.
Yeah. And it actually probably was pretty close to what we were actually making on the outside, based on all the benefits and everything. So, yeah, it was just difficult trying to find something that's well paying.
And so, did they give you resources to help your transition?
They had like I can't remember the name of it. It's basically just like a class you go to, and they're like, yeah, this is what you need to do, blah, blah, blah. One of the best things that happened, though, was during that transition. I think it was transition assistance, I think is what they called it. During that time, there was a guy that came in from the VA and started the process of getting everybody in the class got all their stuff, all their medical records brought into the VA system before we even left active duty. That was probably the best thing that happened during that whole transition program, because by the time I got out, I already had a rating. I had a rating, and started collecting disability like a month after I separated.
Oh, wow. So you had something on the job?
Yeah, because of all, Air Force guys get, poked in the ribs all the time about, oh yeah, you gotta clean up that keyboard to get ready to go to battle. And
Right.
that's basically what happened. Is I ended up with massive carpal tunnel and some pretty good nerve damage in my arms from it, from all the typing that I had done and typing all the different reports and working on the computers. So that was the big thing. And I broke a finger one time in the gym and that kind of thing.
Oh, I thought you were going to say typing. I was like, how do you do that?
No. I was powerlifting and stuff at the time, and I had done a warm up. I did some tricep extensions with 85-pound weight, and was putting the dumbbell back into the rack and was trying to push it aside with my the other dumbbells to the side, my right hand, and it had the 85-pound dumbbell in my left, and started to sit in there, and the stuff slipped all of a sudden and snapped. It got my finger in between the weights, broke my finger. But
so, is this something you would do over again if the chance presented itself?
Being in the Air Force,
in the military, mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's that's the other thing too. I would also not for a million years trade my enlisted time. While I always, it pains me to say I was so naive that I listened to that recruiter that it would be easier to get my commission from the inside, but being enlisted was one of the best things that ever happened to me. Having been in the Civil Air Patrol and immediately thrust into a kind of like a leadership position in the Civil Air Patrol, it kind of went to my head a little bit, and basically not knowing how to lead. And I was a real jerk in a lot of ways. And so being enlisted, particularly lower enlisted, and seeing what it was really like to be the peon, I really needed. And so I am certain it made me a better leader. It definitely made me a better officer. And I still apply the things that I learned then to my job now.
And that was one of my questions that you just answered. That's excellent. Because a lot of times that you wonder, right, how veterans utilize the information and the skills that they learned in the military in their everyday life. So
yeah,
that's good news. Now, you, as I said at the beginning, you've kind of got your hands in a lot of different pots. So tell us, like the first thing that you got involved in when it comes to nonprofit.
Oh, yeah, it was. I'm someone who feels like, God gives us all our gifts and everything, and having been racing since I was 18, I've been racing now. I'm not going to say how long.
We'll just say a while.
Let's just say it's more than 30 years that I've been racing. So,
okay.
So I had that experience and everything. I had, when we were over in Germany, I had actually gone over to Hungary and got my pro license in Formula cars. I got it in a Formula Renault. I ended up buying a Formula 3 car, and right before we came back, during a practice, I had the rear wing on my Formula 3 car failed at Hockenheim in Germany. And at the end of the longest straightaway, which was great. And basically the rear wing laid down.
Oh, wow.
and that made it so the back end of the car was really light, and it happened right as I got to the braking zone. So as soon as I touched the brakes, around it came, put me into the wall at about 130 miles an hour.
Oh my gosh.
And it took the left side of the car off. If anybody's interested, it's actually up on our, we'll talk about it here in a little bit, the Warriors Racers site. I've got it up there as one of the videos. And took the whole left side of the car off. And I ended up with a little bruise on my arm, and that was it.
That's it.
The car
Oh,
did
you
its
were
job.
so fortunate.
Well, the car did its job. It took all the energy of the hit and just dissipated through the car. And so we ended up leaving shortly after that, and I didn't have a chance to like rebuild the car or anything. That was actually like in 2014, but with everything that we had going on, I just never had a chance to work on the car. So about, what year was that? I think it was 2020. I started getting more and more interested in endurance racing, mainly because I realized that as I get older, the intestinal fortitude of going really deep into corners and everything, I don't have it anymore. The young guns, there's a reason why the young guns are doing the sprint races and that kind of stuff, where you have to be 110% every single lap. And I wanted something more where I could use kind of technique and preserving the car and knowing the car and my mechanical background. So I got involved in endurance racing and fell in love with it. Well, I was like, well, I had also reached out at the time to an organization called Vet Motorsports, and had been talking to them, and I even talked to them about becoming a rep for them and whatnot. And so I knew that the teams needed crew help, and so I contacted the Vet Motorsports guys, and they sent it out, the advertisements. I got several vets in, and this would have been the 2022 season. So I got a few vets in there, and then in 2023, got some more vets involved and everything throughout that year. And by that time, I was a regular on one of the teams, and we had one of the guys was getting more and more involved, and as a crew member. Got some more vets coming in at different events and that kind of thing. And this is all in the American Endurance Racing Series. And so at any rate, the end of that 22 season, so it was November of 22. One of the team owners came up to me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in doing an all-veteran team?" I was like, "Sure." And so put out the feelers. Hey guys, you guys want to come build an all-veteran team and whatnot, and got tons of volunteers, and nobody had enough experience to do it because it was going to be at the American Endurance Race Series level, which is one of the more like professional amateur leagues for endurance racing. It's usually like there, and then there are a lot of like pro teams that come down and are running in that to test their cars and get their drivers more experience. They'll run with us because of the caliber of the drivers and that kind of thing. So, at any rate, I didn't want to turn anybody away. And so I was like, well, the easiest thing to do is I'll start calling up people and see what we can do. found all kinds of different veteran organizations across the U.S. doing motorsport in some way, shape, or form. Motorcycles, off-road, desert type stuff, other endurance teams, drag racers, you name it. So, but nobody was really in a position to develop drivers. And so I said, well, I guess I'll just do it myself then. And so I created a driver development program. I ended up getting a couple of really strong nibbles from a couple of the organization, one of them being the Resilience Racing Foundation. The Resilience Racing Foundation was generous enough to say, hey, we really like where you're going with this. We don't want to run it. We want you to run it. You can use our 501c3 status.
Wow.
So we're technically a sub-program out of that. And so as part of not only the driver development program, we created a crew development program as well. So if someone doesn't want to drive, they can crew. If they solely want to drive, they can focus on that. There's always going to be a bit of a crew piece tied to that because there's usually not enough people to service the car. So you usually end up at least fueling or doing something along those lines anyway. But so yeah, that's really where it came about. So it was by about March of 23 when the program really came into existence. And over the course of that year, or the rest of that calendar year, we went from just basically me to about 50 members across the U.S. And we've now partnered with formally partnered with two organizations. One's called the Follow-On Mission, which is they're I want to say they're out of Michigan. Know that right better, but I don't. But they're freaking awesome. They have a Chevy Malibu that they've done tremendous work on, but they focus on Champ Car Endurance Series, and then the other one is an organization called Race After Fire. Is actually run by one of our members, one of the Warrior to Racer members. She got picked up for an all-female team because of our program.
Oh, wow.
So we've had some pretty good successes despite being small and for basically not having a budget. And we're all volunteer. We've got, I think, 4 or 5 now state reps across the U.S.
That's awesome. And again, this is called, the name of the organization is?
It's called Warriors to Racers.
There you go, people. So if it's something you're interested in, then be sure to please go out there again. That's warriors2 racers.org. And I'll get it out there in the comments for you as well. Awesome.
And I think over this coming year, we're going to try to partner with more of the veteran organizations, more of the ones that are offering motorsport, because of it kind of leverages the strength in numbers and advertises their local programs kind of nationally. And so we're kind of becoming the coordinating hub for a lot of the teams and that kind of thing. We now have in the American Endurance Race Series, we have 2 teams in particular that have heavily supported our program. The one from the get-go is called Baller Racing. They have an Acura Integra, and they've been instrumental in getting us going. The other one is Angry Croc, and they run a Porsche Cayman. That's why the Angry Croc.
The Cayman, got it.
Yeah. So But
Let's see about bringing up your website. Let's see how well I can do this. Let's see.
but it's we're constantly looking for sponsors, donations to whatever. I had to be like panhandler on here, but it's still very expensive for us to provide these opportunities.
Here we go. How's that look?
That's good.
All right.
And so the what we have done basically for the program is that little purple car there is one of the ones that we are basically getting on the road. I about 2 hours ago, I actually managed to get it running. It's the car number is 214, so we call it DD for DD.
That's awesome.
It's a little Mazda Miata, and then we've got that white car is Baller.
Okay.
He's been one of the ones that have been really instrumental in the program. And you'll see the black Porsche. That's Tana. She's the one that's on the all-female team.
Okay. That's quite interesting. And so we've got a little bit of about information here. So
it looks like I need to fix where that banner is covering up.
Well, I also don't have the screen open all the way. So let's pop that open and see if that makes a difference. Is that
there we go.
Any better?
Yeah. But one of the reasons why endurance racing is so important and in doing it, I have not seen it personally, but the folks at the Follow On Mission have actually seen this. Is having veterans get in the car because it is and drive in these programs because they're in the car for so long that it kind of resets their brain. They've had a couple of different veterans in their program that have had PTS and hypervigilance because of it. They've seen it's like night and day. The veteran will get in the car again because they're in the car for so long, because these are endurance races. The shortest endurance race that we participate in is 7 hours. So they're usually what ends up happening over the course of a weekend is they'll be in the car for practice. They'll do the 2 hour sprint race for qualifying, where they have to be in the car for about 20 minutes there. And then over the next 2 days, they'll spend an hour and a half to 3 hours per day in the car at speed. And because of the being hyper focused and the adrenaline and whatnot, it kind of gets them back into that groove, and they end up it's like hitting the reset switch, and they come out of the car a completely different person.
And to me, that makes a lot of sense. I've got a veteran friend that he raced for quite some time. And then he ended up, the vehicle had a crash. And while that was being fixed, he had a buddy that decided he actually drifted cars. And so he talked him into just trying it. And he was told, he was a natural, and so now he drifts cars. He just went to Vegas. Actually, he was invited out there to race. So, and I got the privilege of being able to ride with him and drifting. And oh my gosh, I really thought I was going to be screaming bloody murder and hanging on for dear life. I was like this a lot, just because. Before I was supposed to be the first person to ride with him while he was just doing some practice runs. and there was a, I don't know, sheriff's deputy or somebody there who happened to have their child with them, a teenager. And so all the different racers, they would let you ride with them during their practice runs. And he decided, Tom had decided he was going to let this sheriff's deputy's son ride first, because he says, well, at some point I'm going to need, I'm going to need somebody to have some sympathy for me. So, but I asked the teenager afterwards, after his run, and before I got in, I said, so any tips you can give me? He goes, well, he said, if we got in a crash, go like this and just hang on. So the whole time I'm in there and I'm just hanging on for dear life as we're, swerving everywhere. But it was really a good time. And I was really thankful that I did it. So if anybody's out there, veterans, you're looking for something even outside your comfort zone, take a look, warriors2racers.org. Kirk, welcome. Thank you for joining tonight. But yeah, and what else? Do you have any other resources that you can share or that you're aware of in Virginia?
Can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Okay.
Not at least particularly not motorsport related. There are some other organizations that we're trying to marry up with that aren't necessarily motorsport related, which is I can't remember the name of it.
When you think of it, you can send me a message and I'll put it out there and with the my resource links for
Okay,
people.
yeah, will do.
Yeah. So if anybody out there has got questions for Ed, go ahead and put those out there now. I do have a couple of comments. So Angry Sarge thought it was pretty cool that you like Deadpool. So he saw your t-shirt and he did have to go. So he did say that he was going to catch your story later because of course it will be recorded and put out there for everybody to view, but wanted to thank you for sharing that as well. Let's see, what do we got? So
the other thing is not just, I hit on the driver and crew development piece. If you don't want to do either of those, but you still want to support the program, we're always looking for volunteers just to come out, even doing things like there's one of the guys out west that instead of showing up to crew, he shows up and with his grill and cooks for everybody.
nice.
So that's the kind of thing. If you don't want to turn wrenches, or you don't feel you're confident enough to turn wrenches, and you don't want to necessarily get behind the wheel or whatnot, you don't have to do that. You can still help support the program. So there's that as well.
Excellent. I'm not seeing any questions just yet. We'll give it another minute or two. Anything for those who are looking to join the military? Do you have any words of wisdom for them?
Yeah, I think kind of like what I alluded to earlier is, particularly if you're going to be an officer or whatnot, to look at the perspective of who you are leading. NCOs too, look from that. I don't think it's as prevalent with the NCOs because they were lower enlisted at one point.
Right.
But I don't know, and there's, again, just my opinion, I don't think there's a lot of officers that really realize the impact that they can have on the enlisted, particularly the lower enlisted, and to keep that in mind, not when as they're conducting themselves. Don't be the tyrant out there and say, well, I've got the rank. You need to do what I say. Well, no, they might need to do what you order them to do, but there's a lot of things that you could do for that individual that you would gain their respect, and they would end up doing more for you, more, and be more willing to do it if you were to put them first.
Facts, absolute facts.
Because it's really while it is a hierarchical organization that these military organizations are based on, it's really the people that are going to get it done. And so you really need to keep that in mind when you're doing your day-to-day operations, is to understand that it is the people that get it done, not the rank on your collar that's getting it done.
That's very, very wise words. We appreciate that. Well, I'm not seeing any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and get this wrapped up. Ed, if you want to stay put for just a minute.
Sure.
I do want to thank everybody who came out tonight and joined the conversation. Thank you for that. We're up to almost 230 subscribers since last October, so that is pretty thrilling. Again, when we do hit our 500 mark, we're going to be doing some giveaways. So be sure to share that with your friends and family. All right. Well, everybody, thank you for joining me this Sunday evening, and everybody have a great night.